welcome to sportsbet.io. We are previewing game day 1 of the forthcoming Premier League, and we're going to be looking at 4 games in depth and then score predicting the rest. We are going to be starting with the first game that kicks off the Premier League season, which is Manchester United against Fulham. A nice little stat to start with. Talk about home advantage at the start of the season. This is the 8th consecutive season for Man United in which they've started at home, which is a Premier League record. No team has started 8 times consecutively in the Premier League at home. Man United are doing that against Fulham. Joined by Paul Robinson and Neil Mellor. I've said before that this game absolutely epitomises both sides for this one. Man United can win against anybody at home and lose against anybody at home. And Fulham, away from home, likewise, can win against anybody on their day, but lose against anybody. And the fact that Fulham won here at Old Trafford last season kind of epitomises these two sides where they were last season. Thoughts on this one? I'll go to you first, Paul. I've got Man United at 1.59 times. Price is correct at time of recording. Fulham at 5.3. They did win at Old Trafford last season, as I mentioned. What's your thoughts on this one, Paul?
I think United have recruited well. I think De Ligt's a good signing. Not sure of Mazraoui. I think Dalot's probably a better right back than he is. Wan-Bissaka, a better defender than he is. But De Ligt coming in, I think, has solved their centre-half problems in the short term. I think obviously with Maguire, Evans, Martin has been the only fit centre-half that they've had. Be interesting to see how United start the season. They've clearly backed Ten Hag with these players, because you look at this. I think Ajax made a little joke of it on social media, didn't they? They looked at it and said he's kind of putting the band back together from his old team at Ajax. So listen, Ten Hag, they had to back him. What they did, they touted his job seemingly before they gave him a new contract. They gave him a new contract, and now they're giving him the players that he wants. So in a way, you can say, are they taking away all his excuses? There is no excuses now. So they've taken away all his excuses. They're giving him a new contract. They're giving him the players that he wants, and they've got to hit the ground running. Yes, he's got injury problems at the back. They were better against Manchester City. Poor pre-season, lost to Liverpool, lost to Arsenal. Better against Manchester City in the Community Shield. But interesting to see how United start. But they're rightly going to be favourites at home. I think Fulham winning there last season was an upset. And you just wonder about Fulham without Palhinha. I mean, without Mitrovic last season, they finished 13th. So is it going to be another season of mid-table mediocrity for Fulham? Or are they going to be able to push on and build something? Listen, it's a perfect game for United to start at home on Friday night.
This is surely if a manager goes back to sign players that have played for him previously at other clubs, he knows the players know him. Surely that's a clever tactic, isn't it? Is that not what you could say that Enzo Maresca has done the same with Dewsbury Hall at Chelsea? I know this player. I know how to get the best out of this player. Is it a fairly solid tactic to go back to some former players that have done it for you elsewhere and bring him in? Well, Neil, you can go on that one.
You can also say the same about Sam Allardyce and Harry Redknapp, can't you, in the Premier League? So, I mean, there's an argument for that. But then you look at Bayern Munich. Do Bayern Munich sell their players when they're just peaking or just going the other way? Why would Bayern Munich sell Manchester United De Ligt and take in Eric Dyer? You ask a lot of Manchester United fans, they wouldn't want Eric Dyer, but they'll take De Ligt. But Bayern Munich don't want De Ligt. I mean, there's a lot of players in there that you look at his recruitment, Anthony, Van der Beek. There's a lot of Dutch players that have come to Manchester United under Ten Hag and haven't worked. This is his last roll of the dice. They've backed him, but he's got to produce now.
What about the form as a former striker yourself, Neil? There's a lot of questions about Marcus Rashford. He had a performance in the Community Shield against Manchester City where people would say, he'd struggle to hit the water if he fell out of a boat, kind of a performance. He was not looking on it. What's your thoughts with Marcus Rashford and expected of him, his performances at the start of this season?
Yeah, can I just say, how exciting is that? To start the Premier League season with a team who finished 8th against a team who finished 13th. I mean, what's that all about? Manchester United 8th. And their first one for the season.
Yeah, to be honest with you, do you think that the Premier League should just start with the current reigning champions to kick things off? So it should always be whoever won the Premier League. Yeah, do you know what? I don't. And also, a Friday night fixture, it's almost like just a little step into the Premier League. Should it not be like a bang on a Saturday?
If you want to showcase the Premier League and what it's all about, if you've got 2 mid-table teams going at it for, really struggle with that one. But anyway, I expect a better season from United. We're joking about them being mid-table and 8th, but they're better than that. I think the recruitment has been okay. It's needed to be improved, the defence. They had a lot of problems there, injuries-wise. I think if they're relying on Casemiro in midfield, I don't think that's good enough to compete at the top end of the Premier League. They'll have more from Mount this season. He'll be fit. But when you look at goals, you're talking about Rashford. And I watched him against Liverpool pre-season. I thought, look sharp. I feel as though he's got a point to prove. He never went away with England with the Euros. And I just feel as though he'll have a decent season, better. Last season, United's top goal scorers were Højlund and Bruno Fernandes with 10. That's not good enough for Man United. They have to be getting closer to 20 goals. Who's going to start for them up top this weekend? It looks like it could be like a false nine with Bruno Fernandes and Rashford off the left. So, I don't think there'll be loads of goals in this one. I think it'll be really close. I don't see United winning this one convincingly. But if you're looking at who's going to maybe get a goal, and if Bruno Fernandes is that man playing up top, I'd be picking him. I think what's he got? He's gone 5 games now without a goal for United. I think he's always worth a bet for a goal.
If we're just looking at this from a purely price point of view, are Fulham a bit too big at over 5? Bearing in mind, there's stats for opening day season, and Fulham are one of the worst sides you could play, because actually of their last 9 openers in the Premier League, they've only lost 2 of them, and they've kept 6 clean sheets across 9 games. Now that's both home and away, and of course they don't start at Old Trafford every single season. But Fulham away from home last season, they only lost 1 of their last 5 games. You got Man United have only won 5 of the last 10 home games. And if we go back to Man United at the start of last season, where they only scraped by Wolves, if you remember that game, because Wolves were phenomenal. And I think it was the one of those VAR, they should have had a penalty but didn't, when the keeper came charging out and took out a Wolves player. On that basis that we're still unsure about Man United, and I know Fulham have lost Polina in midfield. Or just Fulham just a little bit too big here, because it is Man United of now and not Man United of Sir Alex Ferguson days.
You've got to have some value, though, haven't you, somewhere? United are going to be at home. I mean, all the reasons you look at there, it's all last season. I mean, it's very, very difficult to compare last season. You look at the players, you look at the turnover of players, you look at the different players in the squads. It's hard. I mean, there's not many teams that pick up where they left off from last season, whether it be good or bad. It's the start of a new season, but this is where you're going to get some strange results. This, for me, is the hardest week to pick results of the season. We've seen the likes of John Stones, Phil Foden, Rodri and Kyle Walker have played 0 minutes for Manchester City in pre-season. So, there's going to be players missing out of sides. This is the time you are going to get some strange results. And if you're clever with a bet and you pick them out, you're going to get some good value. And Fulham at over 5s, as you said there, look what Wolves did last year, look what Fulham did last year. Other teams caused Man United a lot of problems at Old Trafford. Is it going to be the same this year? First week of the season, we don't know yet. There is value to be had there.
Yeah, because you get certain sides who are looking forward to it and say, right, bring it on, can't wait for this season, where Man United are a little bit like, yep, bring it on, but we're still a little bit unsure. And if we don't start well, we'll certainly turn on Ten Hag pretty quickly, because he's there, hanging on by the skin of his teeth. So another stat as well that tends to make you think that Fulham could be a bit too big. Of course, they won at Old Trafford last year, but their last 8 games at Old Trafford, Fulham have scored in every single one of them. 8 out of 8. So they've got a goal, Fulham, at Old Trafford. Would you say they're a bit too big at 5.3? Would you be looking at them in terms of, Neil, possibly just to walk away with a point? They'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I'd be more tempted for the point rather than them actually getting the win. I mean, you're talking about Fulham scoring. They've won 1 in 21 years at Old Trafford, and that was last season. You have to go back to 2003 when they last won there in the league. So it's a difficult place to go. I think for United, it's still unknown. How much better will they be? There'll be big pressure because they're at home against a team everyone thinks they should be beating. And until I see United at it and performing and getting the wins consistently, I think they're a really hard side to back. So I'd be swaying towards a draw, certainly more so than Fulham away.
Yeah, the one issue we have with Fulham is that Polina's gone. Now he was a real, what I call a string puller in midfield. He's someone who makes things happen for Fulham. Explain this to me. You're ex-professional footballers. You were in the footballing industry. If Marco Silva came out in a press conference recently and they said, you've lost Polina, what are you going to do? And he said, we're going to buy a player to replace him. We're going to buy a player. But they haven't bought one yet. So they know there's a big hole in the centre of midfield for Fulham. Emil Smith-Rowe, will he fill that? I don't know. He's looked good in pre-season. He's got a nice partnership going with Anthony Robinson. So that's looking fairly promising for Fulham down the left. But if you've got someone of the calibre of Polina, should you always keep an eye on a replacement so that if he does go, you've got someone to bring in straight away rather than wait a few weeks to sign someone in, because Fulham are not going in as full strength as they could be had he been there. What's your thinking on that, Paul?
Well, it's not always that simple, is it? I mean, I think this Palhinha deal has been coming a while. It's not something that's come out of the blue, is it? I think he almost left last January. So it's something that the club have known about for a long time. Finances dictate a lot of transfers these days. And also it's getting the right players in. It's not always easy to get the players that you want to get in. But you make a good point with the Palhinha deal. It's not something that's been sprung up on them. It's not something that they didn't expect this window. As I say, it was almost done before. With Smith Rowe, Pereira's sat in there in the middle of midfield. Smith Rowe either left or right. We've got Lukic playing in there. Traore and Iwobi in behind Munoz in pre-season. So they have got the players there, but the manager's quite openly said they're going to sign somebody. Listen, there's plenty of time in the window left. We're still halfway through August and the season's not kicked off yet. But from a manager's point of view, from a supporter's point of view, you want your business done. You want your players through the door. I'm sure he will be frustrated that he hasn't been able to sign anybody yet, but that will be work ongoing in the background for sure.
Thank you. Right, so that is Man United against Fulham. I'm going to ask for your score prediction on this one. I'll just put up both teams' score. It's a yes at 1.61, but as I said, the price is correct at the time of recording. Fulham have scored in the last 8 games at Old Trafford, but as Neil's quite rightly said, they've only won 1 of them. So Man United against Fulham. Man United to get things underway on Friday night, 1.59 for them to win. The draw is 4.4, which could be tempting. Fulham are 5.3. Score prediction on this one, starting with you, Paul.
I find it hard to back against Manchester United at home at Old Trafford, first game of the season. They're going to want to get off to a decent start. They're not a lot of value at the odds that you just give me there, but I will go for a Man United 2-0 win. But I think there is a way in. You look at Bruno Fernandes, he's going to play, he's going to start the game. 9 bookings last season. The card market's going to be fruitful at the start of the season for a lot of these players until the referees settle down a little bit. So Fernandes, 9 bookings last season. Garnacho, every game he played, averaged 3.5 shots. So there's another way in with shots for Garnacho. So Man United at home, 2-0 for me, and Fernandes to pick up a yellow card at some point.
2-0, correct score market is 9, which is a nice way to start the season. Neil, score prediction for you, Man United, Fulham.
I'd be more tempted for Bruno scoring a goal, to be honest. I think he's an important player for United, signed his new contract, so full of confidence. Yeah, I've got a sneaky feeling, and I'm tempted to back the draw for this one. I don't fancy Fulham to win. Everyone expects United, but Fulham won't be a rollover. I think they'll make it difficult for United, and I've got a 1-1 draw for this one.
That is 8.25. As I've mentioned, the tie between these two is 4. So you're going for 1-1. I'm just looking the last time these sides actually drew. Actually 1-1. Pretty much the last game of the season, kind of 2021 season was the last time these teams drew. The last 5 meetings between these two sides, Man United have won 4 and Fulham have won 1. Fulham do have a very good record on the opening day of the season. So that's Friday night done. We're moving to the first game on Saturday. Sees the return of Ipswich against Liverpool. Prices in this one, as you can imagine, Liverpool are extremely short to win this one. They're 1.34. Ipswich at home, 8.6, 5.6 for the tie. Can anybody tell me the last side that Ipswich Town played when they were last in the Premier League in 2002? Who were their last opponents that they played?
Not a clue. That will be an absolute stab in the dark.
Then have a stab in the dark and have a guess.
Charlton Athletic.
Charlton Athletic is what Neil goes for. That's a very good guess. Paul, just a stab in the dark. Who are you going for?
Why Charlton, Nels? Where did that come
Why
from?
not?
Alan Kirby. Random. All right.
No, not with that. Not a clue. Norwich City. There you go. Let's have the tractor derby.
No, the answer was Liverpool. So the very last meeting for Ipswich was against Liverpool. They lost 6-0 at Anfield. And it was actually Liverpool who condemned Ipswich to relegation because they turned up at Portman Road and beat them 5-0. So collectively over the course of the last 2 meetings between these two sides, it was 11-0. John Arne Riise scored twice. Here's a trip back in time. Michael Owen, Vladimir Smitsa and Nicholas Anelka scored the goals that day for Liverpool. Liverpool have never lost a Premier League match at Portman Road against Ipswich. Played 5, won 3, drawn 2. They've played more games there without losing than any other ground in the Premier League. Liverpool also tend to start the campaign against promoted sides. It's just a thing that happens. I remember they played home and away Norwich when Norwich came up as well. Neil, you've got close connection to Liverpool, of course. What's your thinking in this one? Liverpool 1.34. Surely if you're looking at Liverpool, you're looking at Liverpool and goals, aren't you?
And to this fixture, the last time Ipswich played Liverpool was my actual debut, so that's how long ago it was. It was in the Cup, but I mean, everyone's expecting an away win. I think what you would say is Ipswich, newly promoted, back-to-back promotions. It's not just a case of being promoted from the champ. They've gone League One champ to the Prem. I mean, so I'm thinking a lot of the players are still there. I remember Southampton did it a few years ago and did stay up at. I don't know if Ipswich still have that quality, but the place will be absolutely bouncing Portman Road. The fans haven't seen Premier League football, like you say, for over 20 years. So they'll be absolutely rocking there. It's a lovely stadium, lovely pitch. I just feel as though that first goal is going to be really important. Last season, Liverpool were better against newly promoted teams. The season before, they didn't beat any of them and came unstuck at Bournemouth and Forest, places where we were expected to win. So again, Liverpool are expected to win. They've had a good pre-season. I think it's important to note that. A lot of people are saying Liverpool haven't signed anyone. Liverpool look good in pre-season. There's no injuries. Everyone's got minutes. Saw them against Sevilla last weekend, 4-1. Van Dijk was looking at it. Trent was looking at it. Diaz was looking sharp as well. So these players who've been away on international duty are looking sharp and ready to start the season well. But anything other than a victory for Liverpool would be a disappointing result. A draw would be a great result for Ipswich.
Yeah, there's not many sides who start a Premier League season where they've had more new managers than they have new players. There are rumours that Georgi Mamardashvili is set to join from Valencia, but the rumours are that he's set to join and then possibly go straight out on loan. And Martin Zubimendi, one of those, no, I'll not join Liverpool, I'm going to stay at Real Sociedad. You go, it seems a really strange decision. Ipswich, though, they are good for the goal. Since Kieran McKenna took over, only Stockport County with 96 and Manchester City with 96 have scored more league goals in Ipswich Town. So they are good for the goal. So is this a case of the best we can give Ipswich here, Paul, is for them to bag? And we could be looking at Liverpool and both teams score. Is that something to look at?
That's what I'm on, yeah. Liverpool to win and both teams to score. I think you give Ipswich a goal. First game of the season, Portman Road absolutely bouncing. But as you touched on there, look, League One, Championship, Premier League, it's a huge step between the Championship and the Premier League. Never mind League One and the Premier League. And you look at the nucleus of the squad, they brought a couple of players in. Liam Delap could be a shrewd signing. Ben Johnson coming in at right back. It's going to be tough for Ipswich. They've got a decent budget. They've not brought in that many players. They brought in Connor Townsend with a bit of experience. But as I say, Championship to Premiership, huge. League One to Premiership, almost you can't do it. So it's going to be massive for Ipswich. And they couldn't have a tougher game. Listen, I know Mel's is firmly in the Liverpool camp, but I'm with him. I've watched them this pre-season. Beat Arsenal 2-1, beat Man United 3-0, beat Seville 4-0. But on the same day they played Seville, they played Las Palmas in a friendly as well. They put two teams out, and I looked at both of their teams. Either of those 11s that you looked at, you wouldn't be surprised to see start in a Premier League game. And the thing everybody's saying, Liverpool haven't signed any players, they've not brought anybody in yet. Fine, fair enough. But you look at Conor Bradley, you look at Jones, you look at Elliott. These players have got another year under their belt. They're more experienced players. These younger players are becoming better players. The two teams that you got, I mean, I won't go through the whole thing, but you got 5 minutes this afternoon. Look at those friendlies, Seville and Las Palmas, and look at Liverpool's starting 11 for both games. They've got a really strong squad, Liverpool, this season, and they're going to be there or thereabouts. Yes, they might be light in certain areas, and they might be looking to bring players in, but if they don't, they've got enough to get through. And Ipswich are going to have a really tough game on their hands. Mo Salah looks fit, he looks hungry, he looks strong, and he's had a great pre-season. Cody Gakpo was brilliant in the Euros, really impressive what he did. Darwin Núñez, Diaz as well in their respective competitions. I've got Liverpool to start the season strongly, I really have.
I've already mentioned that this is the fifth time in the last 6 seasons that Liverpool have begun their Premier League season with a match against a newly promoted side. The last time they lost one of those was West Brom in the 2012-2013 when Brendan Rodgers, it was his first game in charge of Liverpool. That's the only time they've lost when they've faced a newly promoted side at the start of the season, which kind of may lead to this stat as well, that no player in Premier League history has scored more goals on match day one than Liverpool's Mo Salah. So, there was a little bit of a question mark about Mo Salah towards the end of last season. It didn't look quite 100% happy. So if he hits the ground running, he could be looking at a goal or two from him, Neil?
no question mark over Salah, one of the best players Liverpool have ever had in the Premier League. What I would say, the question marks are on his teammates. Why weren't they helping out? Diaz didn't score last 8 games of the Premier League season. Nunes didn't score last 8 games of the Premier League season. Liverpool were the top of the table. If his mates would have helped him when Salah wasn't quite at it, Liverpool could well have been champions. Lost 10 points to the likes of West Ham, drew that one. Lost to Palace, lost to Everton, drew at United. These are games where if Salah's not at it, who else is? So he was let down by his teammates in that respect last 8 games of the season. But he looks hungry. Diaz got a couple of goals, which you're thinking he will start. Jota will start as well. Missed a lot of football last season. So Jota will be down the middle. Trent's back in. Robbo's back fit. Liverpool are looking really healthy, raring to go. The question will only be the midfield. Hard to predict that midfield. Szoboszlai's fit. Harvey Elliott's been great. Curtis has been great. McAllister's back. Gravenberch has been a revelation this pre-season. He might start as well. So, Liverpool are looking really good, and it'd be a big surprise if we didn't go there and get the win.
Right, well, let's go with score predictions then, Neil. What are you going for? Your picks in this one.
I want to say a clean sheet for Liverpool, but I'll give Ipswich a goal because of the whole back in the Premier League. Hope it's a consolation. I'm going for a 3-1 away win.
Both teams scoring this one is relatively short, 1.68 at the time of recording, which I thought might be a little bit closer to 2 and evens. You went for 3-1 Liverpool. On the correct score, 3-1 Liverpool, 9.75. Which would be a nice way to start the Premier League season. 3-1 for Neil. What about you, Paul? Ipswich Town against Liverpool. Score prediction.
What I've got written down. It's difficult to stray away from it in the first game of the season, but that's what I've got written down. I've got 3-1 Liverpool. But there's another little caveat into this one. Leif Davis, left back. I know it's League One and Championship. 32 assists in the last 2 seasons. So at some point this season, you're backing Leif Davis for an assist. Ipswich goal, Leif Davis assist. 32 in the last 2 seasons, which is quite incredible.
Robbo, he's got to mark Mo Salah. He's not going to be getting up the pitch. He's got to be marking Salah.
At some point in the season, 32 in 2 seasons, not bad.
Yeah. He's not taking on Liverpool every single week. The thing about Ipswich is they could possibly... I remember you mentioned about the lack of signings for Ipswich. I remember when Sheffield United, I have to give him a mention as a blade myself, when they came up first time under Chris Wilder, he actually went and rung around and got some advice. Everyone seems to call Sir Alex Ferguson like the granddad for advice, and the advice he generally got was don't tear apart your squad. That you might have players in the Premier League who play for in League One, but it's a unit. It works well. They've got a winning mentality. If you take that all apart, you're going to start from scratch. A little bit like the trap that Nottingham Forest fell into. So if Ipswich are coming up with a side who are confident and they're just happy to be playing Liverpool, they'll be happy to lose at home to Liverpool. Because a few seasons ago, they were playing the likes of, for the greatest respect, they were playing the likes of Cheltenham in the league, and they're playing the likes of...
They won't be happy to lose at home to Liverpool. They've earned the right to be in the Premier League. They're going to want to compete. They're not going to be happy to lose to Liverpool. Listen, they're going to be delighted to be in the Premier League. The atmosphere will be as it was. But you as a Sheffield United fan last year, you went to games, you got spanked every week. Was you just delighted to be there? Or did you want a result? You weren't delighted to be there halfway through the season when you're all walking out with 6-0 down. They're not really delighted to be there. And by the way, as we speak, they've just signed Calvin Phillips on loan for the season. So that's a huge signing for them.
Ipswich have
just signed Calvin Phillips for the season on loan.
Ooh. Huge signing. That is a massive signing. They have signed well. The point I was making, it's the first season back where you're just happy to be at the, in the top flight. The second season and third season, that's where the expectation levels of the fans increase. And suddenly,
in the first season last season when you were sat at home watching them against Newcastle. What was the final score, Sheffield United?
Oh, no, right. If you go back...
No, answer the question. Were you happy sat watching Sheffield United Newcastle last year, sat inside Bramall Lane going, it's all right, I'm just happy to be in the Premier League?
I switched over and watched Countryfile instead when we went 6-0 down, so I didn't see goal 7 or 8. I'm talking about that first season back where you literally, I remember at Bramall Lane where you see the likes of Walsall and Stevenage and those kind of scenes. I mean this with the greatest respect. And then within 2 seasons, you're taking on Manchester City and Liverpool. And from a fan's perspective, you're just happy to be at that. From a player's perspective, of course, they're not going to be happy to lose at home. But from a fan perspective, you go, it's Liverpool. It's amazing. So even if they lose 2 or 3-1 and they give a good go, the fans will be happy because they're just happy to take on Liverpool. Or is that just me speaking as a fan and obviously you're getting perspective as an ex-professional footballer?
The reality is, Ipswich aren't going to be judged on games against Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal. The reality is they have got to get points against Leicester, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Bournemouth, Wolves. They're the big games for Ipswich. So the fans won't be happy if they lose at home to them. They'll accept getting beat to City and Liverpool and Arsenal because, okay, what did we expect anyway? But those games, they're massive games. And I'm looking forward to watching Ipswich. I think they'll give it a good go. And it might not be enough. It might just be enough. But I'm looking forward to seeing Ipswich this year.
Can I just get your reaction on Calvin Phillips from the pair of you? I'll start with you, Paul. Calvin Phillips, playing for Leeds, he's at the heart of everything that Leeds do. This is a guy who's earned a big money move to Manchester City. He could go in at Manchester City, take a little bit of time to settle, but they're champions. They're the best side in England, and Calvin Phillips is at the heart of it. He's playing for England. A couple of years later, with the greatest respect to Ipswich, he signed for Ipswich on loan. What's your thoughts on that?
It's England's Player of the Year as well, wasn't it, that season? He needs to refine his form. He needs to get back to where he was under Marcelo Bielsa at Leeds because it's not been there for a long time. I think he's gone to Ipswich, he's seen the owner, he's seen the manager, and I think they've sold him a project. I don't think there'd have been a shortage of takers for him in the Premier League. And you look at Everton, who's highly touted and linked with Everton, and Sean Dyche, the project that he's trying to turn around there. I think that Calvin Phillips would have had a number of suitors, and I think this is where you've got to give credit to Kieran McKenna. Ipswich as a football club, they've sold him what they're doing. They've sold him. Calvin Phillips has gone there. We all know what a great lad Calvin is. It's well documented in the press. Pep Guardiola comes out and says every week what a great lad he is, and he wants him to do well, and he's going to help him in his career whatever he can, but he just doesn't fit in his plans. But Calvin's obviously gone there, and you give Ipswich Town a lot of credit because he's gone there and gone, I like this, I buy into this, I want to play for him. It's a really big coup, really big signing for Ipswich.
What's your thoughts, Neil?
Yeah, really good signing. Bad move to City, didn't work out for him there. This is a chance for him to rejuvenate his career. Outstanding player, and I think he'll play for a manager and a football club where he'll be really appreciated. And I think we'll see Phillips flourish this season. So I think that's an outstanding signing for Ipswich.
Thank you. The next game we'll focus on is Arsenal against Wolves. It's the first time that Arsenal have kicked off a Premier League season at 3 p.m. on a Saturday since 2013-2014 season, when they lost at home to Aston Villa by 3-1. They are playing another Midlands club in Wolves. And here's another astonishing stat. Arsenal have scored in each of their last 33 games against Wolves in all competitions. That's a record that stretches back to 1979. It is phenomenal. Arsenal are 1.2, Wolves are 12, 7.6 for the tie in this one. Paul, your thoughts on Arsenal against Wolves?
Yeah, they're too strong, Arsenal. You look at them in pre-season. They beat Lyon last week 2-0, beat Bayern Munich 4-1. Okay, they lost to Liverpool 2-1, but beat Man United 2-1. Like what he's done, the recruitment with Calafiori coming in. Is there others going to come into that team? Are they going to get a number 9? With Timber coming back into the squad, that's like another new signing. They're not going away anytime soon, Arsenal. If Manchester City slip up this season, they're going to be there or thereabouts. Playing against the Wolves side, who we know they've got a really small budget in the Premier League. We knew that last season. Gary O'Neill started the season so well. They faded at the end of last season. But listen, the holes that Kilman and Neto are going to leave in that starting 11 and in that squad, I think it's going to be a huge void to fill. They lost to Real Vallecano last week. Beat Leipzig, surprisingly enough, 3-0 in pre-season. From a Wolves point of view, they need a good start, and they couldn't be going to a more difficult place on Saturday than the Emirates. Arsenal ready, hitting the ground running in pre-season. They've got everybody fit. Saliba, Gabriel playing the last game of pre-season together. The back four in check. The goalkeeper in place. It's looking like business as usual, and Arsenal do look like they're able to pick up from where they left off. They're very short at home, and rightly so. I really struggle to make a case for Wolves on Saturday.
I always remember in the mid-90s, late 90s to be fair, when Newcastle's first game away from home in the Premier League was at Old Trafford, when Man United were at their toughest, their strongest, their best, and they lost 2-0, I think it was, and Newcastle came out afterwards, and one of their players came out afterwards and said, well, that's it now, the season starts for us because we literally wrote this game off. We knew that when we played away at Man United, Old Trafford's first games in the season, that's one down, we'll start next time. Is this kind of the same mentality here for Wolves, Neil, where they literally go, well, do you know what? It could only be tough if we played away at Man City, so let's get this game out of the way, give it a good show, but then our season starts next week?
And maybe for the fans, I think for the players, they'll be focused to want to start the season well. If they were to get a point there, I mean, what a boost that would be for the confidence. A lot of negativity around Wolves this pre-season, lost Neto, lost Kilman, how are Wolves going to cope? And all of a sudden, if they get a positive result, and that would be an unbelievable result to get anything at Arsenal, it could really rejuvenate them. And there was a lot made about Wolves maybe being in the top half last season, maybe chasing European football. If it wasn't for VAR, they had some bad luck with VAR last season. So I don't give them a chance in this game, but the players will believe it. Yeah, the players will think, right, okay, we can get something. And a little stat question, because you mentioned the year 1979. None of us were born, but that was the last time Wolves went to Arsenal and won. You were born. You were born.
Oh, give it
no way.
Yeah, I was 2.
Okay, 1979.
I was 2.
Some of us might have been. Some of us might have been born. Anyway,
that was the last time this question.
Wolves went to Arsenal and won with fans. Obviously, they went in COVID. COVID season doesn't count. They won 3-2. Who scored 2 goals for Wolves that day? 1979. Famous striker back in the top division. Wolves, Everton as well. This lad scored.
Andy Gray.
Quick, very sharp that, yeah. Andy Gray got 2. That was the last time Wolves went to Arsenal. Pat Rice was playing for Arsenal. There you go. That's how long ago it was.
I know. The only 2 strikers of note I was about to say for Wolves is Steve Bull, but I don't think even he went back to 1979. Yeah, I was 2 in 1979. Paul Robinson, you were?
It depends what month it was. I was either in my mother's stomach or born. I was born October 79.
Here, end of this conversation, not even asking Neil for when he was born. One of the interesting facts about this one, actually, though, is that, bizarrely, Wolves have got a better goal-scoring record at Arsenal than at home to Arsenal. They tend to score more goals at the Emirates than at home. So, again, like we did with Ipswich against Liverpool, you kind of go, well, maybe just a goal. Maybe both teams score is the way forward in the best that we can offer for Wolves. But, Neil, Paul, you're shaking your head on that one.
Nah, Arsenal to 0. Comfortable win. Comfortable start to the season for Arsenal. Arsenal to 0 for me this weekend.
A stat for you that you may like, that Arsenal's Martin Odegaard has scored more Premier League goals against Wolves than any other opponent. So maybe Martin Odegaard to score a goal. Well, it is a play. It's always a play with Martin Odegaard. The problem with Arsenal and the pressure with Arsenal is if they want to win the Premier League, of course they do. Everybody does, but only a couple of teams have got realistic ambitions of doing so. They have to chase perfection. That brings in a boatload of pressure, doesn't it, Neil? That you have to be perfect and perfect from the get-go, because you can't afford to drop points against the likes of Wolves if you want to compete with Man City at the top.
I think Arsenal are the real deal. I think they showed that last season. I think the mentality wasn't really an issue in terms of winning the title. I thought City won it rather than Arsenal losing it. I think they look strong again. Odegaard wasn't one of those players who went away on international football. I think he's the best player they have. So I think he'll have a big influence on the season. A lot's made whether they need a 9 or not. I think there'll be more from Jesus. He had his injuries last season. He's gone 13 games without a goal, Jesus. But I watched him pre-season, and I thought he looked sharp. I did think he looked sharp. So I'd have Jesus to score. I agree with Paul. I think it'd be a comfortable win. And I just don't see Wolves scoring a goal.
Saka's also got 2 in his last 3 against Wolves, so Odegaard and Saka. So even if the strikers aren't exactly firing against Wolves, you've got those from midfield who can pull the trigger and score goals. Right, let's have a look at the score lines, the score predictions in this one then. Arsenal against Wolves, 3 p.m. on Saturday. Paul, you got first picks on this one. Scoreline, please.
I've got 2-0 written down, but I've talked myself into 3, 4, 5. It could be anything. I'm going to go respectable. Wolves putting a decent performance. It's damage limitation for Wolves. They need to come away from the Emirates with a performance. 2-0 Arsenal.
2-0 Arsenal is 5.9. Price is correct at the time of recording. And what about you, Neil?
Got 3-0. Had 3-0 written down. I was thinking, don't say 3-0. I've got 3-0 for Arsenal to win this one.
Which is 6.6 for 3-0. I will tell you that Wolves have actually won their last 3 Premier League games away at London, fairly handsomely as well. They won 4-1 at Brentford. They won 4-2 at Chelsea, if you remember, and they also won 2-1 at Spurs. So they've been to some tough places in London and won recently, have Wolves, but this may be a little step too far. I mentioned Chelsea, they've been beaten at home by Wolves last season, and that's where we're focusing next, the big game on Sunday. Chelsea are taking on Manchester City. Let's have a look at the prices in this one. Time of recording, Chelsea are 4.2, Manchester City are 1.8. Fairly tempting price if you want to put in an acca. 3.95 for the tie. Let's get to your thoughts on this one then, Neil. Chelsea against Manchester City.
Chelsea have a chance. Yeah, I think Chelsea have a chance, and the reason being, City are notorious for starting the season slowly. So when I say chance, I mean a draw. I can't see Chelsea beating Man City. You looked at City's lineup in the Community Shield and thinking, where's all the main men? I thought they were missing a lot of key players in terms of De Bruyne coming on 90th minute. Bernardo Silva was a sub. Foden didn't play. Did Rodri? Rodri didn't even play. So you're looking at them and thinking, God, they're really influential players. How up to speed will they be? Will he chuck them straight in, and will they be at it? Chelsea, who knows with Chelsea? They could put 4 teams out and have quality players. They've got that many players, haven't they? I don't know what the starting lineup will be for Chelsea, but I do think Chelsea will be a tough side to beat this year. The end of the season, absolutely superbly well. They were a really hard side to beat in good form. Changed the manager, of course, which was a surprise. But I think Chelsea will get something from this game, but then City will get going eventually.
Yeah, Enzo Maresca, who was hired by Manchester City to be the manager of their elite development squad. So you've got the likes of James McAtee coming through. Enzo Maresca will know some of these players all too well. No team has earned more points from the opening matches of the Premier League season than Chelsea. But Manchester City, here's one to look out for as well. Manchester City's Erling Haaland has scored 63 goals in 66 Premier League appearances, and each of the opening 2 games, the last 2 seasons, on the opening day of the season, he scored a brace in both of them. 2 against West Ham in 2022-23 and 2 against Burnley last season. Floods of goals at Stamford Bridge last time, where it finished 4-4. Is the draw the best we can offer, same as Neil said here, for Chelsea at 3.95? You're on Man City, Paul.
Yeah, I'm on Man City. You don't know what you're going to get with Chelsea. A squad pushing 50 players. They've had a really poor pre-season. Okay, they drew into Milan last time out, lost to Real Madrid, lost to Manchester City. Let's not forget, only a couple of weeks ago. You look at the Manchester City-Chelsea game in pre-season. Chelsea were almost at full strength. City had 3 or 4 of their players that you would say were first-team starters, and Haaland bagged a hat-trick in that game. So Chelsea are work in progress. Just when you think they're getting it right last season, under Pochettino, climbed the table, got themselves into Europa League qualification place, finish the season really strongly. Then what do? They rip it all up and start again, bring in a new manager who is unproven at the top level, bring in a load of new players. The Conor Gallagher transfer saga is still ongoing as we're talking. João Felix is now put into that mix. You look at the amount of players that I've got written down for Chelsea. Like you say, they can put out 2, 3 teams. You don't know what he's going to do at the weekend. So if you're going to go in betting as in player cards, goals, etc., you need to wait till the team sheet comes out, because you genuinely do not know with Chelsea who's going to play.
Do you know the number of players that Chelsea have listed as first-team squad members on their website? Do you know how many number of players it is?
84.
No.
Honestly, have a genuine guess.
46.
It's 41. In fact, it's probably gone up by 2 or 3 since we started this chat about half an hour ago. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
I'd love to sit down Enzo Maresca just in a one-on-one and say, name me your 41 first-team players.
Do you know what?
I wonder if he could.
The best thing would be not to line them all up and have him go past every single one and go, who's this player? And he'll go, do you know what? And
I'll come back to that
one. That would be. Can you just turn around and show your name on his shirt? That's who he is. Yes, of course, absolutely. But in a way, is this the Chelsea way of operating, kind of catching up with them? And how do they get out of this, Maya? Surely it's got to have a manager and stick with him, which is the one thing that Chelsea don't do, is it, Neil? They literally live off the honeymoon period of a manager and then move on to the next. Surely that's gonna catch up with you at some point.
Well, I'm a big believer. I don't know if Paul agrees or not, but if you want to succeed in football, in sport, you need harmony in your dressing room to create a team, a bond. I don't know how you create that harmony with so many players. You mentioned 40-odd players. I mean, how do you keep everyone happy? You've got big hitters there, and they're not involved. They're not on the bench. They're not even at the stadium. You're thinking, that's not good for team morale and a team spirit and a harmony if you want to succeed. Now, for Chelsea this season, top 4 would be success. I think it would be. But how do you keep everyone happy? And not that sort of negativity hanging about, not playing, and all of a sudden you can hear those sort of little jibes going on in the background. So that's going to be a problem for Chelsea this season. Regardless of who they get rid of in the window, there's still going to be an excess of players there. Yes, you need your squad, but they've got such a big squad, it's going to be hard to keep everyone happy.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, you mentioned top four. If you haven't seen it already, if you have a look on YouTube at a previous video, last week we did predict, or the guys did, the Premier League season team by team, and I have that here. And you did have Chelsea finishing fourth, so you do think they finished top four this season?
Yeah, I do. I think the top three are the top three. I think Chelsea, Spurs, United. Could you bring Villa, Newcastle, West Ham into it? I think there'll be a real battle going on for fourth, fifth. I don't think there'll be anyone getting close to that top three. I think the top three will probably be too good again this season. But Chelsea are in that mix. If they can get it right, then there's no doubt that they can definitely get that fourth place. But I think they'll be in that mix.
For the record, of all the teams that the guys, you were pretty similar with your teams in the same location, but I think Chelsea was the biggest difference because you had them as fourth, Neil, but you had them as ninth. So big difference between these two. You're not backing Chelsea to do that well by Chelsea standards this season, Paul.
Well, you just don't. I mean, we're having the same conversations we had 12 months ago, aren't we, about Chelsea? Like I say, at the end of the season, Pochettino winning games look like they got it right. Now all of a sudden we're back with a new manager, a boatload of new players leaving, players signing. We don't know what we're going to get from Chelsea. Listen, it could be a catastrophic failure or it could go really well, two ways. I mean, Neil's predicted it going well. I've predicted it going the other way. Let's wait and see what happens. Genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished top four. I also wouldn't be surprised if they finished 10th or 11th.
It's nice to have a side, though, isn't it, where you go, just don't know, actually. We just don't know. So it's one to keep an eye on. It could be feast or famine for Chelsea. One of the problems I've had pre-season, which has caused them trouble, is this high line as well, where they've conceded goals. So that's something that Enzo Maresca has brought into Chelsea. And it won't take long, just quickly before I ask for your score predictions. Brought in a player, and he had his critics at Leicester, which sounds really stupid because Leicester pretty much dominated the most of the Championship, and yet some of the fans weren't at Leicester quite happy with him, which seems an odd thing to say. Is this a manager where he's got to hit the ground running at Chelsea, or literally he could be gone within a month or two? At Chelsea, we know Chelsea can be ruthless. It won't take much for the fans to turn, would it?
No, listen, I don't think so. No, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they employed him. I'm surprised that they sacked Pochettino, but it's the way that they want to go, and you give him an opportunity. But like you say, the players there, the new manager there, he did it in the Championship, but they had one style of play and they got found out, and they very quickly had a huge lead, 17 points at the top of the Championship, eaten away. Granted, they came up as champions and they got it over the line, but at one point it didn't look like it. They looked like they'd been found out, and their one-dimensional style of play had been found out. So it'll be interesting to see how Chelsea play, how they start. But yeah, I mean, Enzo Maresca is going to be bang under pressure if they don't start well.
I can tell you, it finished 4-4, of course. One of those crazy every now and then games where you get just a crazy game that comes out of nowhere. The previous fixtures between these two sides at Stamford Bridge, the previous three to the 4-4, all finished 1-0. So you had far more goals in that 4-4 than you had in the previous three games at Stamford Bridge. Right, I can't recall who went first last time. I'm just going to choose Neil on this one. Man City away at Chelsea. Your score prediction, please, sir.
The last time Chelsea beat Man City was the Champions League final. Wow, yeah. That feels like a long time ago. I'm going for Chelsea 1, Man City 1.
Oh, the draw. 3.9 for the tie. And the 1-1, looking at it right now, is 8.25. Okay, 8.25. Point apiece from Stamford Bridge. What about you, Paul?
Got both teams to score, but I've got City to nick it. Both teams to score, City to win 2-1. That man Haaland on the score sheet again on the opening day. Another interesting one to watch. Look out for the team sheets. Caicedo, 50 fouls committed last season and 11 yellow cards. So there's somebody to watch throughout the course of the season for the cards and fouls market. But yeah, City to win 2-1.
Thank you. And as I've already mentioned with the stat that on the opening day, the two previous seasons, that Haaland has scored a brace. If they are winning 2-1, it might be looking at Haaland to score both goals. That is Chelsea against Manchester City, your big game on Sunday. What we're going to do now is we'll wrap up all the other games by just having a bit of fun with the score prediction. So we'll go through these very quickly. Let me just get the prices up first of all, because the first one we're looking at is Everton against Brighton. Again, two sides where you literally can go, just don't know about this one. Everton are 2.74, Brighton are 2.64. So there you go. Just don't know. 3.35 for the tie. I'll come to you first, Paul. Everton against Brighton. Your quick thoughts and then a score prediction for you, please, from Goodison Park.
Got draw written all over it, hasn't it? And as we speak, another bit of breaking transfer news. They've activated Jorginho Rutter's 40 million transfer clause in his contract from Leeds.
This is Brighton.
New manager, Brighton. Yeah, Brighton.
Yeah.
New manager, very young manager. Don't know what to expect. Influx of new players that they've used their scouting network from far and wide. When we do the Brighton games, we're going to have to do some research about the new players that they've brought in. But Rutter will be a good signing for them. Everton, I predict better things for them this year. At Goodison Park, stalemate, 1 apiece.
Which has been the result of the last 2 scorelines. There was a phase where these teams went goal crazy because they had a couple of 1-1s, they had a couple of 2-0s, and then randomly they had a 3-2 or 4-1. If you remember, Everton won 5-1 at Brighton a couple of seasons ago. In fact, yes, it was a couple of seasons ago they won 5-1. So 1-1 for Paul on this one. 1-1 the prices at the moment on correct score. That is 6.75. What's your thinking, Neil?
Won't be many goals at Goodison in their last ever season at the famous stadium.
Yeah.
They only conceded 18 at home last season, which is actually decent, really decent. One of the top sides will be happy with that. They only scored 22. So again, that's something they have to improve on. It was 1-1 both games last year. Brighton won 2 of the last 3 visits previously. I was all over Brighton to win again last season, but 1-1, a late equaliser, an own goal. I've got the same score. I just don't know with Brighton. I've got no idea with this new manager. If it was De Zerbi, I'm thinking maybe could nick a win. But I'm not sure with this new Brighton. So, not many goals, 1-1.
Well, I can say about the new Brighton manager, he definitely was not born in 1979. He's only 31 years of age, which makes you feel incredible. Imagine that. How old's James Milner? He's the Brighton. He's far older than the manager himself. It's just
we've got teeth older than Gav.
So that's Everton against Brighton. Now, this is a heck of a journey for newly promoted Southampton back in the Premier League. They are taking the long trip north to take on Newcastle United. Newcastle are 1.37, extremely short. Southampton are 8, 5.3 for the tie between these two sides. Neil, you can have first picks on this one. Newcastle against Southampton, what's you thinking?
Home win, home win, home win. Newcastle scored 49 goals at St James's Park last season. I think they'll get off to a good start here. Southampton in the Championship got promoted. They had the 14th best defensive record. They conceded far too many goals. And I think they'll look to play out from the back. The manager said they're going to carry on with that style. They might have to change at some point because they're going to concede a lot of goals. 3-0 for me, Newcastle.
3-0 for Newcastle, a fairly comfortable home victory. This is one of those, isn't it? But a few years ago, Southampton would have gone, oh yeah, Newcastle. We could possibly get a point from Newcastle. But not this Newcastle. It's a different prospect entirely. So you've gone for 3-0, which on the correct score, if I can find it very quickly, I don't think I can. I don't think there is a correct score market on this one. But if you fancy 3-0, it'll be a fairly big prize for Newcastle, who are 1.37 to win. What's your thinking here, Paul?
I completely concur with all of the above, and I've gone 2-0 for Newcastle. I think they've still got more recruitment to do. They're heavily linked with Martin Gay at Crystal Palace. That's a deal that's not going away. They're the richest football club in the world. They'll make that deal happen in some way. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get better, Newcastle. And at home, they're a force. Comfortable 2-0.
They played in the League Cup, actually, didn't they, fairly recently? I think it was a League Cup. Was it the 2-leg semi-final? I think it was, wasn't it? Newcastle won 1-0 at Southampton, then 2-1 at home. And last in the Premier League, they won by 3-1. Actually, Southampton took the lead in that one. Goals from Wilson, 2 of them, and a Theo Walcott own goal as well. Newcastle won by 3-1. Was your thinking again there, Paul? What was your scoreline confirm?
2-0.
2-0. Okay, 2-0 here. Of course, I haven't got correct score markets for this one, but 2-0 Newcastle. Then Nottingham Forest against Bournemouth, which was a heck of a game last season. If memory serves me right, and I'm doing this from memory, I'll double check it. I think Forest took a 2-0 lead at home to Bournemouth last season, and then Bournemouth came from behind to win by 3-2. Prices in this one, and this is a must-win you would have thought for both sides, really. But Forest at 2.4, Bournemouth at 2.92. I know they've lost Dominic Solanke. 3.5 for the tie from the City Ground. Paul, first picks on this one. Forest against Bournemouth.
Certainly not going to be first on match of the day, this one, is it? This could be a tough watch. I think there's 2 teams here that'll be more concerned about not losing on the opening day than trying to pick up the 3 points. And listen, I've got a draw all over this. I'm going to guess that Mel's is going to say the same as me. But it's hard to separate these 2 teams. I think Bournemouth will miss Solanke. Forest lost a lot of good players, not brought a lot in that will strengthen them. Forest, for me, they'll be there or thereabouts this season. They'll be back in relegation again. And with Bournemouth, it'll be interesting to see how they start the season, because they could be doing the same if they don't start well. One apiece at the City Ground for me.
The tie is at 3.5. I know score markets on this one at the moment. They will pop up closer to the game. What I will tell you, by the way, is that Bournemouth have won their last 2 games against Forest 3-2. So the last 2 visits for Bournemouth to the City Ground, they've won by 3-2. The last 3 home games against Forest have all drawn 1-1. So they draw at home to Forest, but win at Forest. Dominic Solanke scored a hat-trick last season for Bournemouth at Forest. Of course, he ain't doing that for Bournemouth this time around. The tie is the pick for Paul. What about you, Neil? Forest against Bournemouth.
Yeah, and just a note about that game last season. Forest had Bowley sent off, which if I remember rightly, thinking, how on earth has he been sent off? Terrible decision. And that was in the first 20 minutes or so. So they had played with 10 men for a long period of the game. In the other game, the Bournemouth game at home, there was a red card as well. So there will be a red card in this game. I don't think these teams are going to score many goals this season. Solanke leaving is a big problem for Bournemouth. I've got a draw. I just can't pick a winner. 0-0. And like you say, last game on Match of the Day.
West Ham against Aston Villa is where we are going next. 2.5 for West Ham. Villa, 2.7. That's a very interesting price on Villa to win here. 3.6 for the tie. Neil, what's your thoughts on West Ham and Aston Villa?
West Ham, recruitment, very exciting. Really exciting if I was a West Ham fan this season. They brought in Kilman, Somerville, Wan-Bissaka. But the big one for me, who I can't wait to watch in the Premier League this season, is Füllkrug. What a handful. Really enjoyed watching him at Dortmund last year. Got a couple of goals for Germany in the Euros as well. I think the West Ham fans will absolutely buzz off him. And I reckon he'll get himself a debut goal. So I've got West Ham. Just to shade this one, this might be a surprise scoreline. What were Villa like last season away? Won 8 of the 19, so not great. Actually conceded more than scored last season away from home. So for a top 4 side, that needs to improve for them. But I think this is a tough start for Villa. I've got West Ham to win 1-0.
It's quite funny you say that, actually, because obviously we've got a new perception of Aston Villa with the success that they had last season. They've got Champions League football to contend with this season, which is a big impact on the season, isn't it, when you suddenly got European football to consider as well and playing on the Tuesdays and the Wednesdays and then Premier League at the weekend. What I will tell you, of the last 7 meetings between these two sides, Aston Villa have only won 1 of those 7. So Villa fans will be going, oh, this is tougher than it actually looks from the outset. So you've gone for West Ham to nick this one. What was your scoreline again?
1-0. 1-0 for the Hammers.
Yeah, 1-0. Right, you're thinking, Paul, you tipped Villa to be the surprise package last year, and you were bang on with that. West Ham against Aston Villa.
These are 2 teams that I'm really looking forward to watching for the recruitment side of things. You look at how both teams have recruited. Villa brought in a lot of players, a lot of good players. Douglas Luiz is going to be a huge miss for them. Can Onana fill his boots? But you look at West Ham, what Mel's has said there, the players that they've brought in. These are 2 teams that I'm really looking forward to watching. I think there's goals. I think there's defensive susceptibility on both sides. I think there's goals. I think this is going to be our first Desmond of the season. I'm going to go for a cracker. Best game of the weekend. 2-2.
2-2. 3.6 for the tie. I've just done some very quick research. The last time Aston Villa won at West Ham was all the way back in 2011. They came from a goal behind. Keane scored after 2 minutes. It's R. Keane here. I would imagine that's obviously not Roy Keane. That'll be Robbie Keane. Wow, that's how long back we're going. Do you want to have a punt on the goal scorers for Aston Villa that day? They're fairly obvious, 2011.
Agbonlahor
is 1. And the other
Ashley Young?
No, the other one was Darren Bent. So Aston Villa have not won at West Ham since 2011. Do they have a bit of a bogey side here? 3.6 for the tie, which does happen quite a lot between these two sides. Right, next up is Brentford against Crystal Palace, the all-London affair. Brentford at 2.46, Crystal Palace 2.9, 3.4 for the tie. Paul, your picks on this one?
This is another one. I think I'm predicting a lot of draws, and I'm predicting another draw. It's just hard to know where these teams are going to be at. Brentford this season, with Thiago injured, brought in to replace Tony, if you like. Huge offer coming from Saudi Arabia for Ivan Toney this morning. Is he going to be there? What type of player is he going to be if he stays there this season? Did they get found out a little bit last season? They struggled. I think this is their 4th in the top flight. They finished 16th last season. Palace looking a lot better under Oliver Glasner. Lost Elise, potentially could lose Eze. Now with Oscar Bob breaking his leg at Manchester City yesterday, does that then heighten the interest from Manchester City to go and get Eze that they've been linked with before? So if Crystal Palace are to lose Eze, Elise and Mark Gay potentially to Newcastle, what type of season are they going to have? There's just so much uncertainty surrounding both of these clubs at the moment, which is why I've sat on the fence with splinters once again, one apiece.
To be honest with you, though, if there's one game that stinks of a draw, it is this one. They have played each other 6 times in the Premier League. 5 of them have been draws. 0-0, 0-0, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. And then Palace won 3-1 at home to Brentford last season. But for a certain point in that game, it was also 1-1. The tie is a play between Brentford and Crystal Palace at 3.4. Are you going the same way here, Neil?
No, I'm on Brentford. Yeah, fancy Brentford to get a win. Disappointing season for them, and circumstances being injuries to key players. Obviously, Tony was suspended, but and Buemo as well. So I think we'll see a better Brentford this season. Obviously, Tony speculation will be there, but he's still there this weekend, so I think he'll play and score. He's gone 12 games without scoring for Brentford, so I think he could be the match winner in this sort of game. There's too much talk at Palace. This player's leaving. This player's leaving. I don't think that's there's too much negativity around Palace at the start of this season. So Brentford to win, but just 1-0.
Okay. Brentford are 2.46. They've only got 2 wins in their last 11 games at home, Brentford. But when you're taking on Crystal Palace, Brentford will be going, this is a great way to pick up 3 points and get the season off and running. So 1-0 for Neil for Brentford against Palace. And the final game, which is a Monday night fixture, Leicester City against Spurs. Leicester are 5. Spurs are 1.62, 4.3 for the tie from the King Power. Neil, first picks on this one, Leicester against Spurs.
Stat of the weekend for you. Get ready, gents. Here we go. There's going to be goals in this game. There hasn't been a 0-0 in Leicester against Spurs since none of us were born. 1948 was the last time there was a 0-0 game. That is 96.
Shut your face, you.
96 games have been played since, and there's not been a 0-0. That is my stat of the weekend. It will not be 0-0. Spurs will go there, and I think they'll get a comfortable away win. And the excitement will be again. Spurs can be in the title race, but I don't think they can be. But Spurs will win this one comfortably, 3-1.
Yes, and it's not one of those stats either as well where you go, the 0-0 in 1948. How many times have they played each other since? About 7 times. No, they play each other on a fairly regular basis, of course, and there is always tending to be a goal. I do like the way that you've pretty much put a jinx in it though, because if it is 0-0, I can't wait to speak to you next week. What was your scoreline again on this one?
Yeah, I fancy Spurs too strongly, 3-1.
3-1 for Spurs. They are 1.62. So if you do want your proper value on Spurs, then Spurs and goals is the way forward. Their last game, we've had a couple of belters actually, the King Power. In fact, this is a belting game full stop. If you look at the scorelines when these teams have played in the Premier League, last time Leicester won 4-1 at home to Spurs. Spurs won 6-2. Spurs won 3-1. Spurs won 3-2 at Leicester, 4-2 at Leicester. So we've had 6 goals, 5 goals, 4 goals, 8 goals, 5 goals. This could be a really belting game, Leicester against Spurs. What's your thinking there, Paul?
And there's going to be goals, but Leicester aren't getting any of them. They're far too disjointed and unbalanced for me at the moment. You look at their pre-season, lost 3-0 to Lens, lost 1-0 to Augsburg, lost 1-0 to Palermo. He's got a big job, Steve Cooper. They've got a huge points deduction looming over them, potentially the FFP and PSR. They're not going into this season in a good frame at the moment. Champions last season, 97 points. Going to be a struggle for them to stay in the Premier League this season. I'm going big. I'm going bold with my old team. First game of the season, 4-0 Tottenham.
Like it. If you're going to go big, go proper big. 4-0 for Spurs. Well, I will tell you as well, there's been quite early goals between these. So you can imagine if you get 8-goal thrillers and 5-goal thrillers and 6-goal thrillers, it's not hardly going to be 0-0 at half-time. We've had a goal in the first 20, 25 minutes of these between these two sides. Some of them, we had 3 goals when Spurs beat Leicester at 6-2 a couple of years ago. 3 goals in the first 20 minutes. So look at early goals in this one as well. So Leicester against Spurs to round up match day 1 of the Premier League. We've covered every single team, every single game, some more in depth than others. What is your, and I'll finish with this one, your number one pick of the weekend? Therefore, Paul, I'll go with you first.
Number one pick of the weekend.
Yes.
You got to put a few together, haven't you? A couple of little hackers. Get a couple of away wins in there potentially. Man City, Liverpool, and Tottenham all to win. There you go. There's a nice little trio for you. Liverpool, Man City, and Tottenham all to win away from home.
Okay. All right. Gone for you can go for your number one best pick or a treble as well. So what's your thinking, Neil?
Yeah, well, I'll go home. My number one's Newcastle. Fancy them really strongly. Fancy Arsenal as well as your banker. But then to throw in a little bit of a riskier one to enhance the prices and make it a treble. Newcastle, Arsenal, and Brentford as you three at home.
Yeah. Do you know, I always find if you want to boost an acca, put a draw in there. No one backs the draws, and draws happen in football. You know, I think the tie at 3.4 between Brentford and Crystal Palace, I think that's always got a draw written all over it. It is a nice way to boost your acca. Whatever your bets are for match day one of the Premier League, always do gamble responsibly. We will be back week after week looking at the games, the biggest games, and with some score predictions as well. So, Paul, thank you for joining us today.
Cheers, Gav. Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you for making me feel old. And Neil, thank you for making me feel really old. What year were you born?
I'm an 80s baby. Sorry, 70s.
What year in the 80s?
Early, 82. Late.
Here, end of this conversation. Right. Thank you, Neil. And all the best with your bets for this weekend. Premier League